Hey there, my name is Will Hartman, and today I'm joined with Jackson, Chrissy, and Emily Cox. And today on this episode of Hangar 51, we're going to be talking about the Crusades.
That's right, we'll be talking about the direct and indirect results of the Crusades,
as well as stereotypes and generalizations that affect us today.
Well, I think it's no time like the present to talk about the past, so let's get this crusade started.
This presentation will discuss religion. Due to the faded history of the Crusades, we as a society have a romanticized view of what actually happened during this time period. To ignore the religious undertones of what set up to be the world's first major holy war, we repeat such atrocities even to this day. The reason for this conflict was not remembered, and so history seems condemned to repeat it with escalated repercussions. Through this presentation, we will discuss what started the Crusades, direct and indirect results, and how stereotypes and generalizations have led to misrepresentation of the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of religious wars between Christians and Muslims started primarily to secure control of the holy sites considered sacred by both groups. In all, 8 major crusade expeditions, varying in size, strength, and degree of success, occurred between 1096 and 1291. The Crusades set the stage for several religious knightly military orders, including the Knights Templar, the Teutonic Knights, and the Hopliters. These groups defended the Holy Land and protected Christian pilgrims traveling to and from the region. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, the Pope during this period, Pope Urban II, initiated the First War. The Pope used grand language and convinced men to clean the Holy Land because it was God's will, and they would gain God's favor in heaven by fighting for him. A less organized band of knights and commoners known as the People's Crusade set off before the others under the command of a popular preacher known as Peter the Hermit. In May 1097, the Crusaders and the Byzantine allies attacked Nisa. The city surrendered in late June. The Second Crusade, 1147 through 1149. Having achieved their goal in an unexpected short period of time after the First Crusade, many of the Crusaders departed for home. Guarded by formidable castles, the Crusader states retained the upper hand in the region until around 1130, when Muslim forces began gaining ground in their own holy war. After Louis and Conrad managed to assemble their armies in Jerusalem, they decided to attack Syrian stronghold of Damascus with an army of 50,000, the largest Crusader force yet. The combined Muslim forces dealt a humiliating defeat to the Crusaders, decisively ending the Second Crusade. Final Crusades, 1208 through 1271. Through the remainder of the 13th century, a variety of crusades aimed not so much to topple Muslim forces in the Holy Land, but to combat any and all groups seen as enemies of the Christian faith. A so-called Christians' crusade took place in 1212 when thousands of young children vowed to march to Jerusalem. Although it was called the Children's Crusade, most historians don't regard it as an actual crusade. Many experts question whether the group was really composed of children. The movement never reached the Holy Land. In 1229, in what became known as the Sixth Crusade, Emperor Frederick II achieved the peaceful transfer of Jerusalem to Crusader control through negotiations with Al-Kamil. The peace treaty expired a decade later, and Muslims easily regained control of Jerusalem. The Great Crusades began as a quest to bring Jerusalem under Christian control. While some crusades existed besides these, they were not often as significantly important when comparing the scale of the Crusades as a whole. These long wars created immediate results and some ramifications that didn't appear until years later.
The Crusades yielded many direct and also indirect results. One direct result is, of course, territorial changes. For example, the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. Another direct result is cultural exchanges. European crusaders brought back new knowledge, technologies, and goods from the Islamic world, including but not limited to spices, textiles, mathematics, navigation tools, and medicines. This helps to fuel development in Europe during the medieval period. There was also a great economic impact, as funding crusades and feeding crusaders was an incredibly costly effort. Trade routes also expanded, and trading had a large economic impact. Another direct result of the Crusades is political realignment. The strengthening of centralized monarchies occurred, and feudalism declined. The Crusades were fueled by religious zeal, with the Catholic Church initiating and promoting the wars, particularly the papacy. Many Europeans were motivated to fight in the Crusades because of a deep religious duty. The Catholic Church also promised Crusaders indulgences as a spiritual incentive for their participation, meaning they would obtain forgiveness for their sins, ultimately securing their place in heaven. To this day, Crusaders can be viewed as inspiring stories of heroism and valor that are still admired, sometimes even made into a mascot. On the other hand, the Crusades had many indirect results that still bleed into today. For example, the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The precedent the Crusades set, that war is an acceptable use of force to claim Holy Lands, has created transgenerational trauma. Another indirect result of the Crusades was the impact on Byzantium and its eventual decline, specifically the Fourth Crusade with the sack of Constantinople. However, not all things associated with the wars were bad. For example, the intellectual exchange that took place, such as the translation of Greek and Arabic texts into Latin, was another significant contribution of the Crusades. They helped to advance philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and science in Europe. Social change also occurred, such as the rise of the merchant class as a result of increased trade. There were also some gender norm changes. During the Crusades, women managed the estates and looked after households, while men were off killing Muslims. Due to the loss of history about what the Crusades were about, many stereotypes and generalizations have powerfully been underlaid in the American subconscious.
In 1095, Europe was still in the Dark Ages, where there were constant inter-feud clashes and conflicts. However, when Pope Urban II called for everyone to take interest in a crusade, that is, a trek to the Holy Land, people were interested. He thought the crusade would bring peace to Europe and unite everyone, as well as to bring power to the Western Church. Unlikely did Pope Urban II would conceive that there would be many crusades spanning over centuries, which would be the driving political passion of the West before nationalism. The Crusades were dangerous and costly. It bankrupted many noble knights and kept many in poverty. The journey was also matched with starvation and disease, which killed many people along the way. Yet, when people came back after losing much, they still viewed it as an act of the love of God. When the Crusades turned dark, with the first of many pogroms, which is killing of Jewish people, in 1096, where the Christian soldiers believed instead of traveling 3,000 miles to fight Muslims, began slaughtering nearby Jewish communities. Moreover, while the Western Christians were making a new identity for themselves, the Jewish people were being viewed as the skewed, demonic other. For example, apparent belief was held that Jews were killing Christian children and using their blood for matzah at Passover. And when Richard Lionheart was preparing to begin the Third Crusade, the image of the Jewish people was that they were child slayers, and this idea was utterly frightening to the Christian people. So, these ideas were enculturated into Western Christian values and religion, setting the groundwork for Hitler's own crusade, caused by a millennium of Christian anti-Semitism. As a side note, these rumors and ideas were easier to believe and be acculturated with, since forms of communication were slow and weak. It was also noted that after the First Crusade, the capture of Jerusalem, where the Christian soldiers massacred 30,000 some Jewish and Muslim people, monks justified that they were a savage race and only fit for extermination. Furthermore, unlike today, there are many independent journalists and people with cameras that can share what really happened, so the truthful accounts are more likely to be seen by everyone. There is a pattern that is recognized in most covered events, such as the Pope's Crusades, Hitler's, and the US's. Each one sought to restore something from a struggle and then try to gain power and control. For Pope Urban II, he wanted to unite the war-torn West, still lost in the Dark Ages, and bring power to the Western Church. Hitler wanted to bring back glory to their fatherland from World War I, which utterly crippled Germany, and make them a world power once again, of which this would lead to World War II. And for the US, they wanted to preserve and restore exceptionalism, and also seeking power and control over events and materialistic things, which led to them meddling in other countries' affairs, such as war in Afghanistan, Iraq War, and the current Israel-Palestine conflict. Over the last many centuries, they have been poked and prodded by everyone, all stemming from the Crusades in 1096. This is the ethnogenesis of how people have evolved around the concept of crusading. and has been normalized and occurs today as this is recorded.
Ministers say the crowds on Sunday rivaled those at Christmas.
The president was one of those Americans who went to church, but he spent a lot of the time this weekend meeting with advisors at the presidential retreat Camp David. When he returned to the White House, he spoke to the media.
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while, and the American people must be patient. I'm going to be patient, but I can assure the American people I am determined. I'm not going to be distracted. I will keep my focus to make sure that not only are these brought to justice, but anybody who's been associated will be brought to justice.
In conclusion, as the Crusades fade from history, we often replay history, forgetting why we even fight or hold prejudice based on inherited beliefs tied to religion. We as a society have a Christian-skewed view of what actually happened during this time period. It must be asked if they fought for God because of their religion, or if they fought because their religion required it. Do these men truly fight for the honor of God, or are they simply fulfilling their duty in society as a Christian? To ignore the religious undertones of what set up to be the world's first major holy war, we repeat such atrocities even to this day. The reasons for this conflict were not remembered, so history seems condemned to repeat it with escalated repercussions.
This presentation discussed what started the Crusades, the direct and indirect results, and how stereotypes and generalizations have led to misinterpretations over the years. It helps understanding why we fight today in the Middle East. We must go back centuries to the very first time when religion was used as an excuse to slaughter.
I want to thank everyone for watching this video. Hopefully you gained some new insight on the history of the Crusades. This has been Will Hartman.
Emily Cox.
And Jackson Christie.
Have a great day.